Unmuting.
Let's call a meeting of June 1st, 2026 of the Board Finance Committee to order. No one is participating via Zoom. Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Establishment of quorum, well, it's just Antonio and I, so we'll do the official reading of the roll call.
Trustee Aguilar.
Here.
Trustee Garrett
Here.
and trustee Davis is out for the.
Okay. Well, yes, we are gonna do change in order of business. We'll move 4.1 up to the front. 2.6, we'll put off until the next meeting. Any public comment under 2.7? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move to 4.1, which is the district audit entrance conference.
Or she's gonna put it up on the screen, I believe, and you can try to
Move through the slides when she gets going. Let's give it a try.
Okay, looks like we're good to go. All right, ready?
Yeah.
All right, hi, everybody. Thank you for having me out here today. My name is Jordan Waymoto. I am the audit manager on engagement. And I'm here to talk about the audit plan for the audit of fiscal year 2026 for Yosemite District and also the foundations. So here's just a quick brief agenda of the things I'm going to cover today. Start off with the introduction of the team, talk about some roles, talk about the deliverables, our approach, 2 new GASB updates for this year, go a brief overview of the timeline, and some other communications and considerations, as well as our communicating our independence from the district. And at the end, we'll have some time for questions and discussion. Great. So we have a new partner rotation this year. His name is Jeff Jensen. Jennifer Richards was a previous partner, and she had a 5-year rotation requirement. So we have a fresh set of eyes from the partner perspective. We also have Jen Aris, who's going to be our secondary partner this year. She performs the quality and assurance check over the audit report as soon as it's drafted. It needs to get through her review in order for us to be able to issue it final. I am the audit manager, and then we also have Vox Gao. He is the senior associate this year. Vox and I will kind of be boots on the ground, just interacting with everyone involved on the district side to get sure to make sure this audit gets done timely. That's the team. So roles and responsibilities. There are 3 major players of any audit. There's the board of directors, which is you all. Then we have management for the district, as well as Crow, the independent auditors. Crow is hired by the board, and we report directly to the board. We work with management to ensure the audit gets conducted. The board is responsible for oversight of the external auditors, as well as oversight of the financial, the information presented on the district financials. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of financial information and related disclosures in accordance with GAAP, that is on the district's financial statements, as well as design, implementation, and maintenance of internal controls related to not only financial reporting, but as well as federal grant compliance on top of that. And then for us, as external auditors, we are responsible for performing our audit under generally accepted auditing standards in the United States of America. Okay, so this is our deliverables. We're going to have the audit report for the district, which is going to include a report on state compliance as well as federal compliance. We believe that this year we're going to have 2 major federal programs, being the child development care. Yeah, sorry, I haven't struggled with the name. As well as student financial aid. Student financial aid is like, you're going to have that every single year. It's the largest federal program you guys run. The child development one was called out by the federal government as a high risk audit program. Therefore, we must test it if you guys exceed the $1 million threshold. The federal compliance supplement still hasn't been officially issued yet. So the child development one kind of going off of, talk in the auditing world, that one was being called as high risk. So once we know for sure when that gets released. As well as the district financial deliverables, we're also going to deliver the independent audit report for both foundations, Columbia College as well as Modesto Junior College. So our approach with auditing, this audit isn't something that just happens at interim and year end. It's a year-long process. We're making sure that not only does us auditors have an idea of what's going on in the district, we're also staying aware of current environment and things impacting the district's operations, such as the federal government, state legislature, or anything that's being implemented. At all times, we act with professional skepticism, maintain independence, and have objectivity with our audit. We do audit in phases. We're kind of in the process of getting started with the interim phase, and then we'll focus on our federal compliance, state compliance, and some general controls during that phase. As we move into the year-end phase, we're going to kind of wrap up all that state and federal stuff that we couldn't get to or finish during interim, as well as start to conduct the audit over the district's financial statements, which is, and then help build the audit report. And then we always have some significant risks. Revenue recognition is a required risk. Management override controls is another required risk. So we take a look at that. We perform some control tests, or not tests of controls. We corroborate controls and gain an understanding of them as it relates to those high-risk areas. We also look at journal entries to identify any potential override controls from that perspective. Okay. These are the two new standards that are implemented this year, or going to be applicable and need to be implemented this year. So GASB 103 is financial reporting model improvements. So this really looks to enhance the elements of the management discussion and analysis. So GASB is looking here to remove essentially like a boilerplate language and make the MD&A a little bit more robust in the storytelling component of the district's audited financials. GASB realized that most people, most users will kind of look at the MD&A and then go all the way to the end to say, like, is there any audit findings? And those are the two most viewed portions of the report. So they really wanted to kind of put some structure around the MD&A. So they have some required sections. And so there needs to be 5 required sections, starting with the overview of the financial statements, a financial summary, a detailed analysis, significant capital assets and long-term financing activity, and then current known facts, decisions, or conditions. So one big change that we're seeing is the MD&A can't have any repeated information from the financial statements. So a lot of the times, other clients will just kind of copy and paste the balance sheet income statement. So the MD&A now is going to have that information, but like on a very condensed level. So it'll just be like total assets, total liabilities, right? And it won't be as detailed out as if you were to look at the statement of financial position or the statement of activities. So we're going to definitely work with you guys to kind of help make sure that the MD&A kind of fits this new format. I think it's going to not be a very big change. It's going to look very similar to previous years because you guys already kind of follow that format anyways. The next one is GASB 104. Oh, actually, sorry, before I move on from 103, there is another aspect of that's changing, and it has to do with the presentation of the operating activity and non-operating activity for the districts. So GASB says that for operating activity, it has to include just like the Pell Grant and then tuition and those type of aspects. And apportionment is going to drop down into the non-operating activity section. So the income statement will essentially have the same bottom line. It's just like how things are being presented is in slightly different order. So if you were to do a comparison of this year's to last year's, you would notice that things are just kind of organized a little bit differently. But it's really just, an exercise is like just moving things around. It's going to say the same information at the end of the day. Moving on to GASB 104. So this is just related to your disclosure of capital assets. One thing that's really changed and called out here is if the district has assets that are held for sale, that those need to be called out specifically. I find that that'd be very uncommon for a community college district to have that category. Other aspects of it is they want to break out the SPIDAs and the leases separately on your guys's, capital assets footnote. And it already is set up that way anyways, so it's not gonna be a big change. So these two, standards seem pretty easy if we compare to like last year's, and then GASB 87 and 96, which were our hardest standards that we've seen as of late. Any questions about that? I know that's kind of a lot. Here's just kind of our timeline. So as I mentioned before, we have our planning, which is right now, moving into our interim, which is coming up really soon here. Then year end, it's going to be in that September, October timeframe. And then we're looking to have the report finalization process before Thanksgiving, and then come back out here in December to present the audit results. So the concept of materiality is applied to this audit, which means that we don't look at every single dollar. We set a materiality threshold that we feel as auditors would impair the judgment of a user of the financial statements, and that's our secret auditor materiality number. And we use that to help dictate the level of testing that we're required to do. And then we also look at that if we find any sort of discrepancies, or if there's something really small that doesn't rise to material level, that won't be considered when we're evaluating the results of the audit. I kind of briefly already talked about risk of material misstatement, which is whether due to fraud or error. Our focus there is high risk areas such as risk, revenue recognition risk, and management override controls. And then if we have responsibility to communicate evidence of fraud in significant matters, thus if we do find any of that during our audit, we'll be sure to bring that to the attention of the board of directors promptly, and the key level of management will also be made aware. We always like to pause and just kind of ask, is the board or audit committee have any areas that they felt were something that you would want the external auditors to just go a couple extra selections in, or maybe dive a little bit further in, anything that's really kind of pressing on your guys' mind?
I can think of, you should.
Okay, well,
Next time.
next time. All right.
See, now that I know I can throw something at you. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, and you can totally email me, Jeremy, have my contact information. If you think of something you want us to do, just let me know. And then kind of already talked about all the key considerations for the audit. And then the last slide that I have to go over is just regarding our independence. So at all times, we must maintain independence, whether that be actual or perceived independence, we have to maintain both. And I would like to communicate that according to the standards of the AICPA, Pro is independent from the Yosemite Community College District and the foundations. All right, that was the end of my presentation. Anyone have any questions about any aspect of the audit, the timeline, any new standards, anything like that?
So do you come back, you'll come back hopefully in December
Yeah.
when we have our audit reports all completed, and you'll go over the summary at that.
That is correct. I want to caveat that as of today, the federal compliance supplement has not been issued. Last year, that was a huge pain point, and it caused a ripple effect and delayed in every single audit across the state, probably the nation. Fingers crossed that they don't delay that again, but the current administration and the federal government has been slow with things. So we're kind of at their mercy with the timeline. And if that happens again, I'll make sure to communicate it as soon as I
Question. So based on the audit last year, would you say there's any area that we should start paying attention a little bit, get everything in order? Was there anything that was going a little bit too slow, or things that, just say, remember that could be an issue? That way we can prepare our team to do more of the work up front. Anything, if there's anything?
From a timing perspective that you're talking about, everything, your guys' audit runs very smoothly. It's very on time. The delays we experienced last year were out of our control and not anything to do with the district or management in any regard. That was just, the federal government was really slow with things and that huge shutdown. But no, I don't think so. I definitely think that, this audit is one of the ones where you guys are just well prepared all the time. And so I really appreciate that. It makes things run very smoothly, but I don't have any comments in that regard.
No. Thank
Okay,
you, Jordan.
All right, well, thank you all. It was nice to see
Appreciate
you.
Good to see you.
All right.
Great summer.
Jordan, you're very nice on your comment.
Yeah.
This clicker, I get to use it. Maybe my turn.
We'll move on to 3.1 now, the monthly financial status update.
Well, they have it in front of them. You can start to go over it. There it is.
So we're through April in this case. And we can see with our revenue, we're right at where we were prior year. We're 80.49% of total budgeted, and last year 79.9. So right at about the same amount. If we recall, we do have a 2% deficiency, what do you call it? Deficit factor. Thank you. Deficiency, yes. A 2% deficit factor, which we had last year as well. So everything seems to be lining up as far as revenue goes with the same amount of last year. Our expenditures in total were under budget. Last year we were at 77. This year we're at 76%. So about 1% less than what we were last year. Most of that is associated with Modesto Junior College, where last year they were 81%. This year they were 77%. So there's some savings there. Columbia College is also slightly down from 84.17 to 83.81. I did do an analysis today since we are through May, just to take a look at where we stand, and everything seems to be under budget in total for all sites, which is nice to see. So we should be in good shape for the current year from my estimates right now. But in total, we're still under budget from where we stood last year even, and last year there was savings. So this year it's anticipated as additional savings. So ultimately, everything seems to be running smooth with even less expenditures this year than prior year.
So, question, MJC is consistently under budget for the end of April, which would be 83.33333%.
What are you looking at?
80, I'm looking at, so if they were right on budget,
Yeah.
they'd be at 80, so why is Columbia College, I'd be at not much over, but they seem to be consistently over by end of April.
When there are other aspects of June that hit at the end of the year that might skew the numbers. And like I said, I looked at through May, and they're going to be under budget, mind you, very slightly under budget, but they are going to be under budget this year. Last year, if we recall, they were over budget. They had to use their site-specific reserve to cover some deficits. This year, from what I can see, they're going to be under budget or right at budget, basically, based on the expenditures from June of last year compared to what I anticipate for this year.
A little bit of the difficulty is the expenditure budget includes one-time expenditures such as the site-specific reserves and a few others. And so especially if we're looking at the first quarter, second quarter of the year, those can really sway those percentages. Now that we are pretty far through the year, they do true up. I think we'll experience that MJC won't fully expend their budget in the current year. And we'll talk about that as we get into the budget, where we do allow for the colleges to spend their site-specific reserves, and they may have a longer-term plan. We may budget for the expense, but they don't necessarily spend it in that one fiscal year.
Correct. Yeah, these numbers here do include the site-specific reserve expenditures, whereas my estimates, I exclude those out because those are money that the sites keep, whether if they don't use it, it still flows in.
So in those numbers, as far as expenditures, that would include what we've talked about previously, which is the money that MJC has spent on additional class offerings that we're not getting funded for.
Correct.
But yet they're still under budget. And so Columbia is doing the same. So I'm just wondering how much over on unfunded FTS is Columbia than, if you were to compare them equally, how much over?
I think if you look at our next item, when Mary gets to it, both of them had a pretty consistent increase in FTES. It's kind of funny the way that continues to hold true, that We talk about this.
All right,
Hmm?
that's not what we were.
Well, I would say that MJC has additional FTS that they're serving, but at the same proportion, Columbia also has additional students that they're serving and not getting funded for. So if you see the increase, they are consistent between the colleges and they both generate about the similar percentage of the total
But you know
overall FTE.
you know where I'm going with this.
I don't, where are you going?
Where I'm going with it is that MJC, even though we're getting unfunded FTEs, is still under budget, and Columbia College is in the same boat, but they're over budget. And that money's got to come from somewhere. So if the trend keeps continuing, it's going to end up being the same story retold over and over again.
And it has been years of that same story. We continue to make efforts, but you'll see in the tentative budget, when we move to that, at least the tentative budget, we're not making an effort towards that. And so that'll be part of our budget planning as we get the final state budget. So we will definitely talk about that as we move into the budget presentation.
Yes.
So I can tell you that when we set up the budget for MJC, we actually start in a hole of about $500,000 last year. We started in a hole, well, actually for 25, 26. When I divvy out the budget, I have nothing left. So I don't want people to think that just because there's savings, it's because we're hanging on to it in any way, shape, or form. That's not what we're doing. What happens is we have natural savings from when vacancies happen. We might have a couple $100,000 depending upon we have benefit savings naturally from that when our benefits are budgeted at a higher rate than what we're actually paying. But our schedule is completely expended. So any money that we've gotten that goes to the schedule, that is expended. So we're seeing savings from like prior year savings where we've allocated those dollars out through program review, but yet when the faculty or when the groups have the money, they're not necessarily spending it. So it just gets dropped back into our bucket. So we have had accumulated savings over the years since this new model has been put into place that are not getting spent. So this is a little bit,
Okay,
it's a little bit skewed.
and you're saying that's not happening in Columbia?
I don't know what's happening at Columbia, but Christina's here, so she can probably speak to it.
I'm sorry, I didn't know who you were.
Yeah, sorry. Nobody introduced us. I
Yeah,
didn't
nobody.
see that. Senior Director of College Administrative Services, so kind of
Okay.
counterpart to Sarah
Okay, oh, in Columbia.
at Columbia.
There you go, so you're. No, sorry, I don't. You're right.
So I got there in October of 2023. So I was new from the business office here at MJC. But when I came on, Trevor had a system of, we rolled over budgets based on what was in the past. But what I noticed was every time we roll over budgets, there's a lot of budget revisions right in the beginning of the year. So in that year, we just kept rolled over the budget when I came over. It was already there. And what I'm noticing is the TTOL, part-time overload, was always budgeted under. And so that put us over. So we budgeted for 18 million or 1.8 million, and we spent 3.6 million. However, we had a new VP of instruction. I don't know what was going on, but when I gave out the budgets, wasn't really running to see if anybody was spent over budget, because when they give out budgets, everybody should stay within their budget. That didn't happen. So this year, I stayed on budget pretty much. That's why we're gonna be not over budget. And so we just kept telling everybody that if they put in a requisition or purchased anything, we had to have a budget allocated to it. So that's how we kind of stayed under budget this year, is just making sure that everybody understood not to go over budget. But when I came, we had the one-time funding, which is used to be, what was it called?
Like specific reserve.
No, but you had a thing where we send out an email to the whole college. Hey, one-time funding, what would you like? And so everybody met. Yeah, it is a site specific. So that is our savings. We had 2.1 or 2.2 million. And so it would just be allocated out at these once a year. And that kind of got out of hand. So we stopped doing that because we went over budget and we had to use our site specific reserves to, fill what we were over.
What we're seeing at Columbia now is much more attention to detail as it relates to the budget. Better understanding of position
Yes.
control, making sure that all the personnel are budgeted and spent accordingly. Being the smallest site, they have less flexibility. She'll still have departments that don't fully spend their budget. Sarah has more departments with larger budgets that don't spend their budget. And so again, last year they overexpended at Columbia. This year, they've done a lot of work to make sure that they do not overexpend. But again, when we get into the budget document, we'll talk about some other funds that kind of cause a problem for both colleges.
At Columbia, we got the attitude of, let me say sorry later.
Yes.
And has always turned to the district to cover, and that really had to stop. So we literally, I think, thanks to Christina Quinn, it's like, you don't have it, you can't spend it. You can't simply say, oh, it's gone, and then Trevor and everybody has tried to cover. So I think that is getting under control, and the leadership has changed for that reason.
It's mostly salaries, a lot of stipends or just over, P2L. And they're not that they're not watching it. I just think that, sorry, later. Everybody was kind of new.
I hear what you think. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
that's exactly-
I think
Yeah.
that,
I've been saying it for a long time.
Yeah.
yeah, so it is getting under control. We are looking at who's on Fund 11, who should be on Fund 11, who shouldn't, and what expenses should be out of Fund 11 or Fund 12. So we are documenting those for future so that it doesn't shift or play that shell game.
Okay. Any other comments on item 3.1? Okay, we'll move now to 3.2, the full-time equivalent student update. Mary?
Okay, so I ran this
Right.
FTS update on May 19th, so we're kind of right in between our P2 and our P3 reporting period for 320. Just getting a little closer look at where we're at now that we have more positive attendance hours being booked into the system. For our purple numbers in the regular summer column, we're at 2,041 FTS. And then for our fall, we're at 7,668 FTES. That was basically everything that was in the system when I ran this on all the documents that I had for the colleges. And then for spring, this term still has some projected positive attendance hours in there. Columbia College is still working on collecting their spring hours and getting those entered into colleagues. So I still had to project out some hours for there. But we're at 7,123 FTES. And then our early start summer, most of those courses had already reached census. We had a few that hadn't, but most of that's just census based. And then I think we had about 6 positive attendance courses that I provided projections for. And we're at 749, which brings us to 17,581 for the fiscal year. So I think it just dropped slightly from the last time we met. And then I will be working with the colleges this month to get all the missing roster verifications. All those, okay. I'll get all the final positive attendance hours that still need to be collected for spring and early start. We'll get those entered by the end of the month. So I'll be ready to do final reporting next month.
The estimated unfunded FTS, we left that from the P1 number.
Mhm.
This report changed just slightly, but we didn't have another apportionment report to tie it to. So we felt that that was still reasonable enough at this time.
So the actual. So the total. So the total unfunded estimate is 1,011.05.
As of first principal apportionment. And so
Okay.
we'll get second principal apportionment around June 30, somewhere around then. And we'll update it at.
See an increase?
Absolutely, but
Based
how good will it be is the question.
right now, the state chancellor's office, along with the league, are advocating with the governor for unfunded growth, taking Proposition 98. And actually, they approach us to help that we can meet with our also representative to give a little pressure. So that's what we're probably going to help out, but they're really saying, hey, pay attention to us and give us what we are due. And we're one of those districts, so hopefully, but yes.
Are there
It's on
many
it.
districts like ours or?
The Central Valley is really growing and I could talk about growth now because it's appropriate. I was going to talk about it a little bit in the budget. So in the budget, the governor has proposed an additional 1% in growth funding in the current fiscal year with 0.5% next fiscal year. The problem with the growth formula is, okay, Trevor, calculate 1%. That's simple to do. Except for the education code says that there's this formula developed back in 2015, 2016, and based on that formula, you may get less than your growth formula. So this year's growth formula was 0.50, but we only received 25% of that. So 0.125 rounded off to 0.13. So everyone talks about 0.5% of growth. We only got 0.13. So when the 1% comes in, will we get 0.25, or because there are many districts throughout the state that are not growing, their dollars become available in the pot, which we will then be able to collect more. So last fiscal year, when we closed the books, we had a significant number of unfunded FTS, and then the state dumped a lot of money in our direction. We still ended up with 39.55 unfunded at the end of 24-25. So the question is will we end up around 1,011 unfunded? Will we end up around 750? Will we end up around 500? That is a number that I can't quantify until the chancellor's office
Is
does their
there,
job.
so we have 72 districts, is that what it is?
Correct.
Out of the 72, what percentage are they growing like us? Do you know?
We have access to it from time to time. It's
Is it a few?
half.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. Central Valley is.
So half of them are growing and
Yes.
But how much of that is attributed to dual enrollment?
A lot. Some of these districts are going crazy with dual enrollment because they saw that as a way to recuperate the FTS.
So out of the 36, you think a lot of the 36 is because of dual enrollment?
We're partially because of dual enrollment, right? I mean, if we're 1,000 over, we can determine how many students we're serving.
Just thinking out loud, okay.
Flat? You think it's flat?
MJC is staying relatively flat because we don't have the additional resources to put towards additional dual
So
enrollment.
most of it is just new students that we're taking from UCs and SSUs, whatever.
Yes, and the issue with dual enrollment is you're not supposed to be taking away from your general population of
Right.
classes as well. And so because we have so many students on our wait list, we really have to balance, do we add another dual enrollment or do we add another course on?
And we need to get our kids graduated and stuff, not wait 4 years to get a class. Okay.
The hope, and again, I'm talking about some of the budget stuff. Again, the state hasn't signed their budget yet. But the hope is that there will be additional resources that when we do the final budget in September, that I'm reflecting those additional resources in the budget, which can include allocations specifically to MJC.
Okay. Good numbers, but
It's Mary's fault.
Too good.
hey, Mary's just the data collector. She's not, no. All right. We'll move on now to 4.2, the general fund tentative budget, 1.7.
All right, do you have my PowerPoint?
6 minutes.
Yeah.
6 minutes, that's actually gonna be plenty, I
The
think.
last one, the last.
No, we have 4 more. after.
Okay, then you don't have to.
Yeah, I
I'm
think we
just
have the
kidding.
calendar after this, yeah.
Mess with me like that.
Sorry.
All right.
Let's wait for it. Okay. Did you have it as a PDF version?
It's not as a PDF. Okay. You have it as a PDF.
Once it comes up, I'll just ask you to scroll then. 5 minutes for each page will be enough. So what you'll notice from my presentation, if you've been paying attention, is it looks the same as the prior years. And I do that intentionally, absolutely. Because I want you to be familiar with what we're presenting. Go ahead to the next page.
You have control.
I do, okay. Sure,
PDF.
it's a PDF.
Yeah, you should be able to stuff, but
You
I'll
can,
look
yeah.
forward it.
Thank you. You can skip that. In the state budget process, we're in that orange box. The governor's releases May revision. So the next couple of blue boxes are the legislature working with each other and coming up with their own ideas. We're hopeful that in the next 2 weeks that they do some sort of reconciliation between what the assembly wants and what the legislature wants. And then they work with the governor, and the three of them hammer out. And by the end of June, we then have a signed state budget. And throughout the summer, there are some additional adjustments that happen once the budget has been signed. Go ahead to the next page. Now you're in there. Okay. So the purpose of the tentative budget is to allow us to begin spending money on July 1st. So we know a lot of information based on the governor's budget proposal on January 9th. And that's what we use to build this budget. We've heard about a May revision, but based on it being just released 2 weeks ago, we can't incorporate that all in time for the tentative budget. So we will revise this tentative budget later and bring it to the board in September. Next slide. We incorporate those known salary schedules. We estimate others. This is something that I wanted to emphasize this year to make sure that we're capturing the costs at the tentative budget. We do have a deficit factor on our apportionment of 2%. Remember going into COVID and coming out of COVID and talking about recession, and year over year, that hasn't materialized. We have lowered that deficit factor from 3% down to 2%. We do anticipate 25, 26 ending up at 0. And so that will free up some revenues and make them available. I indicated earlier that at this time, we don't have an ongoing allocation to MJC to correct the budget imbalance. We have budgeted total cost of ownership for IT and facilities, but that is as a one-time allocation. And to allow the sites to spend, we do budget a portion of site-specific reserve. We don't know how the prior year was going to be spent. We don't know how the current year is going to end up. So we give a reasonable allocation to allow them to begin spending. We utilize the resource allocation model through DFAC. So this has received a reasonable review from DFAC. We build our budget based on realistic budget projections. And we saw that and we heard that from both colleges. We try to budget every single expense, and we hope that those expenses come in under. We reasonably budget our revenues, but at times those come in over. And this tentative budget is balanced for ongoing revenues and expenses. And now we move into some of the numbers. And again, I try to make this as easy as possible. So we're not looking at pages and pages of budget information. But we see that our total revenue generates about 172.5. We consider all of this to be ongoing revenue. So we don't currently show one-time revenue on this. And as we move to the next page, we start this with the prior year base budget at the top of 167 million, and we're showing you the changes in expenditures associated with STEPCOM longevity, classification review, the known YFA salary increase. The next three, 5, 6, and 7 were based on the January COLA being announced at 2.41. Now the COLA isn't set until certain calculations are in. And now we're hearing that number is 2.87, but for estimated purposes, we put in the 2.41% COLA, and we talk about institutional costs. So you see the ongoing expenditures is 172.3. If you can go back one slide just real quick, ongoing revenue of 172.5, and then back, ongoing expenses of 172.3. So it is a tight budget as it relates to ongoing. That is before we heard about the May revise that is talking about the additional growth funding, talking about more COLA and some other things. In this budget, we have included some site-specific reserve, as I discussed earlier, allocating out the additional non-resident and baccalaureate revenue that has been collected in the current fiscal year. And you can see our IT and facilities total cost ownership. Going on to the next slide, we get an idea of how our fund balance will look next year. Again, we start with our estimated beginning fund balance ending this year at around 51. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Look at our ongoing revenue and expenditures, one-time expenditures. We anticipate ending at the tentative budget for 26-27 with 45.6 million. If you go on to the next slide, I think we start talking about fund balance. So how is that 45.6 million broken out? As that number gets bigger and bigger, I want to point out that it's
going lower this year. I get bigger.
If you look at the end of your numbers, it is getting bigger. So when we ended last year, it actually ended up at
Well, because as our budget gets bigger, our weren't required automatically increase every year. So that's gonna increase that required reserve two months of expenditures that are gonna continue to tick up over time.
when we finish the final budget, and in my presentation, I think I still included in this one, we talk about, we know that we're budgeting this, and we know expenditures will come in slightly less, we know revenues will come in slightly more, and that the change in fund balance won't be as drastic as we're presenting. But we finished the final budget 25-26 showing 36.2 million. So in my opinion, based on that final budget compared to this tentative budget, we're going from 36.2 up to 45.6.
So where did the 51, the previous thing?
The 51 comes in from our estimates on how the 25-26 will end. We've started to take out and say, we allocated this amount of money, it's not being spent. We've started to look at interest income, it's coming in higher. One of the things that we haven't factored in yet is deficit factor, right? We budgeted for 2%. Now I'm telling you it's probably going to end up being 0. So looking at this though, that 2 months of reserves, as our budget gets bigger and bigger, that dollar amount gets bigger and bigger. So out of the 45.6, we've got our 2 months reserve. We've got those budgets that are controlled by the colleges or essential services relating to site-specific reserves. And that does leave us an amount available for budget planning. We currently show it as a PERSTERS reserve, which Jeremy and I have talked about, and it needs to go away. We haven't had to increase for that, I think, ever since the number's been in the budget. the fund balance that I'm showing you here of 45.6. I'm expecting it to increase due to the deficit factor elimination and positive revenue and expenditure activity. So where's it going to end? I can't quite tell you. I imagine it'll be $3 to $5 to $6 million higher. So we should be considering, and I'm looking at you as you bring recommendations to the full board, what should we be doing with these budget planning amounts as it relates to potentially IT improvements, facility improvements, or other improvements that we're looking at? Move on to the next slide.
Let me know when the questions start.
Okay, let's talk about I think there's one more slide after this, and that might be questions, so then you get to start. So as it relates to 26, 27 May revise, again, we are getting positive information from the state. Our section of the budget is doing well, the Proposition 98 section. State as a whole, they were looking at a $25 billion upgrade across their 3-year budget window, primarily driven by stock increases. The chancellor's office and working with the governor really wants to focus on maintaining funding stability. There is a 2.87% COLA that also includes some categoricals, but not all. We're hoping for some more flexibility with that. We are hearing of the term super COLA and a 4.31 COLA, which includes us having to take on an additional benefit for our employees, which is a paid pregnancy disability leave. I'm interested in how the state resolves that. Do they call it a super COLA? Because the connotation for many districts in the state of California, once it shows up as a COLA, it 100% gets moved over to the salary schedule. So it may come to us as growth funding. It may come to us as base funding. And so we have to wait to see what the governor signs into law. The enrollment growth, 1% proposed in the current fiscal year, 0.5% in the budget year, and some very minor changes to one-time allocations. So again, this is a positive May revise as it relates to California community colleges. We continue to be treated well in the budget cycle. And while keep hearing of the stock market that's running like wildfire, and we've got a couple of IPOs that are going to come out in the stock market, like SpaceX and Anthropic, and there's a third one that are California-based. We anticipate that state revenues, at least on those capital gains, are going to continue to increase. And let's look at the next slide. And now we're off the question. So again, I want to, especially as it relates to the full board, to run through that quickly. But here today, I want to take some additional time to answer board questions and maybe even talk about this document a little bit.
This one's Yolanda. How's the stadium?
It's in DSA, and we're just waiting for DSA approval. We've already gone through the submission process. They accepted our application, our drawings. Then first round of comments, we've addressed those, provided the additional geotechnical report that they requested. And so now everything's submitted. We're just waiting for approval. We should have it this week or next week.
When can we see people actually working and doing some?
Once we receive the approved drawings, we'll go straight into bidding. We could be in construction by September as planned. I have the stadium reserved and everything, so it's a matter of DSA.
September.
All right. What was that?
I was gonna ask, so depending on what DSA, could that change the budget amount? Or are we
No.
pretty close?
No, we're still close.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the budget right now is how much?
Right, 7 million?
Ish.
Yeah, okay.
Low. There's a lot. The press box isn't what's expensive. What's expensive is going to be the elevator,
Right.
all the size and wind load modifications that have to be made. So we're pretty lucky if we can get this through DSA, because we are very close to navigating a full mod, and that would be 40, 50 million. So getting this press box up there is going to be very beneficial just from the safety side of things.
in regards to, ask the question again, because I don't know what you're asking for about planning for the extra money, is that? Or things that we should be focusing on? I can tell you mine, like, easy.
I think over the last several years, we've made an intentional commitment at the board level
Mhm.
to make sure that we're funding facilities improvements. And yes, we're talking about the B word and maybe there will be one. Even if there's not, there are going to be significant facility items that will not be touched by a potential bond. And so we need to continue to make that commitment. We heard from Lucas as it relates to the technology improvements that are currently unfunded. And so it doesn't have to be at the tentative budget, but I would like the board to be thinking, what's that dollar amount? And it's been $6, $8, $10 million a year over the last 3 years of how much we want to set aside to tackle some of those facility improvements
Okay.
or technology improvements.
This is just mine. You know, I think we, at least I believe that we rely too much on, oh, we can't do anything, we need the bond, we need the bond, we need the bond. But then I found out there's buildings not being utilized. And then we go on a tour for the CTE, and every CTE, welding, everything, industrial electronic is packed. I mean, why can't we do something without the bond? Move another building or another piece of area so we don't have all these students on the waiting list. I mean, why do we always have to just wait for a bond? I mean, that's my whole thing with this, you know, why can't we?
Your older buildings are the ones that are less utilized, and they are just simply do not have the infrastructure to support what your CTE programs, like a welding program is going to require ventilation through the roof. It's going to require these interior infrastructure modifications.
Industrial electronics.
And yeah, same thing. It's the infrastructure, electrical upgrades. So John Muir and Ansel Adams have exceeded their useful life. So your bones of those buildings are really hard. You almost have to take the whole building down and rebuild it again to get it to where you want it now.
So you're telling me that there's nothing we can do to get more space for all those programs close of getting the bond? There's nothing else that we can do with little money here and there?
We could build an
I just don't
individual.
believe that, but you're telling me that, I'll believe you, yeah.
The existing areas where your CTE programs are the ones that have the failing infrastructure. If you're talking about moving a program into another building, that's set up as like a normal classroom. So it's the infrastructure, the ventilation, the electrical, and all of the other things. So it just depends. We would have to evaluate it, but your underutilized buildings are the oldest ones that have lead, asbestos, and their plumbing is old, elevators are old, and they're not ADA compliant to current standards.
Remember what you talked about with the stadium? So there's a threshold that if you cross over a certain point, you're basically, it triggers everything. So we're trying to do the stadium up to that point where it doesn't trigger a complete changeover of the entire stadium, which then would be $40 million. And that would be the problem with the older CTE buildings here on the West Campus, is it would trigger that. And then it would be a massive expenditure. A, you don't want to open that door. And B, we just don't have the money.
Well, that was.
So that.
Not what I said, though. I was not talking about expanding
Well, but-
existing buildings.
Right, but if you were to move them to another location, to a general classroom, you're gonna be dumping a ton of money in for additional electrical, ventilation, all sorts of things that don't exist there right now. And the same thing could happen, that could trigger that point where Department of State Architects then comes in and says, now, you're basically crossing over the line here, and I agree with you.
No.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that should have happened last bond that didn't.
So basically,
I understand. I just.
yeah, No, we didn't.
My
Make it
thinking
known.
is like, let's figure, God, there's something we can do. I mean, if we have the best people working for us, let's figure out things to
Well,
do that, close up, tearing a building down and.
First, we bring it up to the legislation. So we did bring up to our representative, say, hey, you have to help us with this DSA really strict like requirement, because if you touch something, you have to remove everything to make sure everything is needed. So we're seeking support and say, let the district decide, as long as ADA, it's all that compliant. Doesn't mean we have to redo the whole air system, HVAC. So that is on the table, and other school is jumping on and say, that's a good idea. We want that. So now we're trying to get an appointment with the education person at the state chancellor's office, because that's a state issue. When we visit federal, like, oh, that's really state. So that's one aspect. The other thing too is that the board we could do a special study session and say, okay, knowing we have all this aging building and with the reserve we have, do we entertain the idea that every year you put a certain percentage to make sure maintenance are taken care of instead of this one-time funding? So that the same thing, you invest in IT. So that is something, Antonio, that we could say the board, what is the direction? Because like I said, when faculty see the money on the table, all they see is that. But if they see the idea that this is what investment's gonna go in, so that's something we could definitely look at. But there's two issues for sure, Antonio. But the DSA would help us a lot.
So Lucas is gonna have to come to the board and make a and I would like for this conversation we're having here, from an IT perspective, because it brings up a bigger conversation, which is when you go out for a bond, you're spending down those bond dollars down to zero, but yet you're using bond dollars to build all this additional infrastructure that down the road, the district does not have the money to maintain. So I've said it before, if we go out for, if bond, we need to make sure it's written in such a way that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot here. That if it's permissible and legal, we need to make sure that we have monies in perpetuity set aside to maintain all this additional infrastructure. Because, we found out with a lot of these buildings, if it hadn't been for our last director of facilities who held these contractors' feet to the fire and they didn't come back. I mean, there were a lot of problems with a lot of these buildings, and thank God for her.
What about our?
Science building.
No, right here, our solar thing.
It's
operational. Yeah.
fixed it.
Yeah, they got fixed.
How long?
Where'd it go, Yolanda?
It's been fixed for a while now.
Where's Paul on his present?
How long was it off?
So-
How many years?
Off a few years, but part of that was trying to get the original manufacturer of those, which went out of business. So there was some navigating of trying to get the original manufacturer to take ownership.
The new one that we approve over my objections, but not only one vote.
Working well.
You know, you're gonna get in trouble for that one, right? Something happened. Where's that one at anyways? I don't even know.
Campus.
That's for the football stadium.
And it's working perfectly.
Yes,
Perfect.
functioning, yes.
Oh, that's not gonna be on you. It's gonna be on here, so.
All of our solar arrays
Well,
are working.
it's, again, when you go out to bid on these things, the lowest bid option on this critical infrastructure is not always your best, because when you put this out, you've gotta calculate in, yeah, this may be great, but this may be a one-off company.
Yeah.
That is what we found with the solar project. And then they go belly up. And guess what? Now you're out with the company that was more like a Siemens or somebody like that, that's been around forever.
There are other construction delivery methods that Modesto City Schools and some of these other school district use that we could look into, like lease back, design, bid, build. We would have to just do a little bit more research on those, and we would have more control over the contractors working on our projects.
Sherlock has been doing it.
Yes,
Forever.
yes.
We are working together, so to be prepared if this
So
does move
before we
forward.
drag it out too much far beyond the hour that Antonio just.
Nine.
Let's put in there, if that's you, absent a presentation from Lucas, because I'm not an IT expert. I'm not a facility expert. We rely on Yolanda and we rely on Lucas. So get together with them. And back to your point, I will support whatever we need to do for one time, for one-time fund to do this. And because keep in mind with facilities and IT, our total cost of ownership, we got dinged in the past on our accreditation for not funding, pre-funding these items. And it's just a better way of doing business.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. Anything else from anybody? Look at that.
Got a calendar item.
Oh, yeah. Well, the calendar item is gonna be quick because at the last meeting, I asked for my fellow committee members to provide input. No input was provided. So as chair, I'm gonna implement the meeting dates as presented. So there you go.
My week,
Done.
day by day, so.
Done. So with that, then the next meeting will be September the 8th back here. Anything else for the good of the order? With none, we're adjourned.
Got some time off.
Yeah, there you go.
Even though I like these meetings compared to the regular meeting.